Can I keep going?
Yes, come on.
And so what I feel we are lacking as examples, what is not being modeled, but that we see today is modeled in front of us, is a man and a woman that lives with a sense of conviction. Not what people will do for them, not pomp and circumstance, but doing it simply because it's right. Because it's God honoring. Living with conviction is about living with purpose. It's about living with passion. I find today we don't live with a code, especially my generation. Anything goes. Living with conviction, and can I use more words than just King James words? Living with conviction is about a sense of honor. Do you think that's just not the honorable thing to do?
Come on.
There should be a code that you live, a code that you go by. Living with conviction says, I engage in my life's work. I ask you, what is your life's work? I ask you, what is your project today? I engage in my life's work. I engage in my life's project simply to honor God, whether or not I'm ever recognized by man.
That's right.
I have conviction. Whether it's one person here or 100, I'm going to sing the song the same way. Whether you have the power to punish me or not, I'm going to still be on time. I won't treat my boss with respect, but then come to church and treat the church with disrespect. Because I have a code. I have discipline. I live with conviction. I won't do you like this just because I have more power than you, or I can get away with it. I'm going to treat everybody. I have conviction about what I do.
Amen.
And what I believe when we look at the parable in Matthew 20 or Luke, they had ulterior motives, and a lot of times we are not aware that we have ulterior motives. A lot of times we are not aware deep down inside, and I'm going to explain this a little bit further, how we just have this propensity to use God. And let me tell you something, when we use God, you better believe we're going to use each other. It's reflected in a lot of our relationships. It's reflected in a lot of our marriages. It's reflected in our relationships with our children. Living with conviction. Now, conversely, let me give you the flip side. Well, not yet. You know, this is what I shared it in this manner on Saturday, and I asked you, when is the last time you did something simply because you loved it?
Yeah.
Or because you did it because I was afraid of what may happen if I don't do it. I mean, living life out of fear can be exhausting. We can get to a point in life where, I tell them at the church sometimes, we enjoy life more sleeping than we do awake. We just hate everything about our life because we're living with conviction. We're living with the lack of conviction. Now, I want you to understand something. I don't believe this is about living right, living wrong. I don't want to apply a moral category. I want to preach to you like, you know what? We are all born again and delivered for those of us who are.
Amen.
I don't want to preach to you as though I have arrived and somehow you haven't, because I'm still struggling with this too. I say that to say this. Born again people, I hear people say all the time, well, you know, saved people shouldn't act like this. Says who? Saved people can act crazy. I want to say that again. The notion that somehow you shouldn't be going through because you're born again, that's part of the reason why you can't be delivered. Because you believe you shouldn't be there in the first place. Born again people can make mistakes. Just because you are born again doesn't mean you have not escaped your humanity. You are still in a body. When I live with conviction, and what I'm inviting us to do, as we've seen it modeled before us, it's about living not out of fear that God's going to punish you, or not out of fear or excitement that God may bless you. This is what I call that bartering gospel, or the retribution gospel. And I don't believe any of those can be substantiated throughout the canon. The bartering gospel means I'm blessed because I've lived for God. You know people who do not live for the Lord and have just as much as you, or they have less problems. Now let's be real. You know people who do not pay their tithes. I told them last week I was tired because my neighbor had a yard party, a house for whatever. His music, well, let me see, does he go to this church? Y'all may know where I live. He cracked that music until about 1 or 2 a.m. Then when I'm leaving out for church at 8 a.m. mad and half sleepy, you just see the remnants in their yard. The tent still up, tables out, paper cups, they sleep. God didn't come down and punish them because they partied all night long. I just need us to understand something. We need to work with this. This notion, sometimes we go to work thinking that we got the edge on somebody because I'm saved, so God's going to make me the head and not the tail. And so then you don't do what you do to prepare yourself for your career. Why? Because I'm saved. So I don't have to go to the workshops to learn how to use the new computer system. I don't have to do this or that because God's going to make a way out of no way. Something God revealed to me that I want to share with you today. Let's be honest. You know why a lot of times we see unsaved people advance? Because they live with conviction. And God is saying he needs his people to start living with conviction. A sense of conviction. So this barter gospel. If I want something, I need to do something for God. We mistake God for each other. That's how we treat each other. If you want me to treat you right, come to my birthday party, I'll come to yours. It's just so difficult for us, even in our sense of self, to experience a God that loves us unconditionally because we have received so little unconditional love in our own lives. And so we're always bartering with God. That's not conviction. You want God to do something for you. Or anytime you want to draw somebody, it's time. Let me tell y'all something. The worst thing you can do with your loved ones is threaten them to the faith. You cannot threaten them to the faith. Just stop it. Because you're making them mad. You're pushing them away from the faith. Telling your loved one, God's, I don't care what they're doing. I tell Zion Faith Center all the I do not care. Never reject your loved ones for the sake of the church. Love your kids. I don't care what they do. Don't ever let a preacher make you believe that his house is perfect. And so you got to, let me tell you something. Preachers' houses, should I let that secret out the bag? Might as well let that out the bag. Let me tell you something. We are nowhere near what you think we are. We are struggling, but we have learned to trust God. So let me let you in on a secret. Everybody goes through. Everybody has a hard time. But this barter gospel, this retribution gospel, if I don't do this, this is what we do. We do this a lot of times. We should threaten people. If I don't do this, you don't do this, God's going to get you. The power of God is going to come down. If you don't contribute to this special offering. And preachers know themselves, they've been late on their own tithes. Well, Pastor, are you preaching against the word? No, I'm not. I'm preaching that God is a good God. And he's not like us. And the ultimate point, let me just get to the punchline and I'll back up. The ultimate point that I want to bring across is this. Unless you're doing what you're doing for God because it honors God, don't even do it at all. I want to say that again. And we have a man and a woman of God that lives, when you do it with conviction, and I'm going to show you in Scripture, that God could care less what you do for him. There is no action on this earth in and outside the faith. We contaminate the faith and make it hard to bring people to the faith. Because we make them think we are in Christ where we are because we've somehow earned it. Let me tell you, man has been struggling with this for thousands of years, and we still don't have it right because we still believe that somehow I can barter with God. And when you barter with God, that's not a life of conviction. Let me tell you, there are two parts of conviction. This is my definition. Living with conviction is living for the love of God and living for the love of neighbor. I'm going to say that again. Living with conviction. I do what I do because it honors God, or don't do it at all. And I'm going to do what I'm going to do for you Because you've been made in the image or likeness of God.
That's it.
And if I can't do what I'm going to do for you on that basis, I shouldn't do it at all. You know, this time I would rather have 2 people out of 100 invitations come to my party because they want to be there.
That's right.
The 99 come, and they're coming with ulterior motives. But see, watch this. We like that. We will prefer, and I want to get on that a little bit. We will prefer to be stroked by people, as opposed we would rather live in the illusion of a relationship than to be yourself. Live with conviction and find out who you really have relationships with. Why do I say living with conviction? It's doing whatever you do for the love of God and the love of neighbor. Because we see in Matthew 12:28. You know this passage when one of the scribes comes to him and says, what's the greatest commandment of all? And Jesus says, here's the first. You should love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength. The second is this. You should love your neighbor as yourself. They are connected. There's no way I can honor God and worship God and mistreat you. Let's make that clear. We're talking about living with a sense of conviction. So with this definition or this mindset of conviction in mind, doing what I do for the love of God, doing what I do for the love of life. When is the last time you've done something for the love of life? I do it just because I love it.
Yeah.
Aren't you tired of doing things out of fear? Well, I'm afraid what they're going to say. I want to talk about that a little bit because I don't believe that's about sin. A lot of this is about, more often than not, how we've been raised. How we've been raised to be in relationships. And so I think we miss the boat when we're always casting people. You're either sinful or you're not sinful. Everybody's sinful. Everybody's broken. We all need Jesus. God is doing just as much work in my life as he is to somebody outside, to the prostitute outside. Jesus is overworked with all of us. That's not in my notes. That just came out. Maybe that's my own garbage.